Good to have you with us on this Wednesday edition of the Ed Schultz Internet Broadcast. How many hours have we spent on Keystone? You can go back and search our website and see how often we have touched on this controversial issue in the middle of the country, and it only just gets better. An offshoot to this, if I may, I don't know if any of you have been watching the History Channel in recent evenings, the Sons of Liberty. Now, what's the connection between that and Keystone? We're now down to a property rights issue in Nebraska, which is being totally ignored in the United States Senate. In fact, today is going to be a second marathon session this Wednesday. They're going to be voting on 18 amendments that would approve the Keystone XL pipeline. I mean, they're throwing all kinds of stuff out there. Campaign finance, Alaska wilderness, all kinds of stuff just to get Keystone approved on an amendment basis. The president's not going to make a decision. Just get that through our American heads because he doesn't have to. That's number one. The Republicans think it's a jobs bill, which it's not. They just want ammunition, being able to say to the American people that President Obama is against jobs and they're shovel-ready jobs, even though there's 42,000 of them and they're temporary. That's the case they want to make. So the Democrats produced their first filibuster of 2015 yesterday on Keystone XL, saying, no, they want a cloture vote. All right. So they don't have the 60 to get it through because the Democrats are holding strong here. Bottom line in all of this is that all politics is local. We are now down to property rights. This goes back to the colonial days. This goes back to the days when King George was taking property because he wasn't happy with the way, number one, property owners were using their property, the profit that they were making, the independence that they wanted. And so to be heavy-handed, they would just take property as collateral and say it belongs to the king. Boom, it's over. Well, we're seeing this all unfold in this series that's playing on the History Channel. But this was the birth of property rights. When you own it, what does it mean? When you own it, does it mean you control it? When you own it, does that mean that you're the final say? When you own it, do you own the liability? Do you own the responsibility? Can you do whatever you want? Are you the final say in all court proceedings that you are the property owner? This, going back to the colonial days and the rebellion against the Brits, is to the very fabric of what's happening right now in Nebraska. You have a multinational corporation that is playing every legal angle it possibly can to make sure that they can run this pipeline over whatever land they want so they can get their foreign oil to market. And the easiest way to do it and the fastest way to do it is with a pipeline that won't benefit the people that where the pipeline is going to be or the American economy at all. It'll be thrown on the world market. We take all the risk and give up all the property rights. Now, this, of course, is made for strange bedfellows. You got Tea Partiers and you got liberal Democrats on the same side here. And you've got local judges who are going to be making these decisions now. But this process is going to run out for at least another couple of years. There's no way this pipeline is going to be built during Obama's administration. It can't. It won't be. Because the legal procedures that are going to play out the next few years will take it well beyond Obama's presidency. So the president doesn't have to give it a stamp of approval. And what the Republicans are trying to do is get the American people to think, oh, wow, he's an obstructor. So what's the multinational doing? We'll get to that in just a moment. But first, I want to bring in America's lawyer, Mike Papantonio, great friend, Ring of Fire radio host. Pap, good to have you with us.
Ed, how are you?
What's the birth of property rights? Where did it all start?
Here's the history. Government had this power has evolved. Government had the power to take people's property if there was a health, safety, and welfare issue. Now that's more recent history. It used to be just arbitrary. Government could go in and get it if they wanted it. And then we had the standard that is there a public good and a public necessity that's at stake here. That evolved, and everybody misses this. I'm so glad to see the Tea Party on, because they're hitting on all cylinders on this issue, and that is that all of a sudden we move from the government being able to take property under standards of health, safety, and welfare or need to now corporations. This is the big change, you see. All of a sudden in the 50s, you had this collection of cases that developed that were where corporations came in with eminent domain, and they wanted to develop property. So they'd go to L.A. and they would say, we want an eminent domain over this area of slums so we can tear down the slums and build high-rises. So all of a sudden, we start taking this away from the king, way away from the king, where they'd arbitrarily come in. The next step is government can come in at a certain standards, health, safety, and welfare. And now we have corporations that say, gee, we just want to come in because we can make a profit. What's happening in Nebraska is brilliant. You've got 100 people out there who say, you know what? We have the right to test the underpinnings of this taking. We have the right to say, is this really being done for a compelling public good or a compelling necessity? If you take a look at the decision the Supreme Court made the last time, 4 of 7 justices in the Supreme Court there in Nebraska who looked at this, they focused on this. They said, this isn't about a public good. This is about profit for a private corporation, and we think it's unconstitutional. You had, out of the 4, you needed 5 votes. 5 out of the 7 votes at the Supreme Court level to take a look at this and say it's unconstitutional because it doesn't have anything to do with health, safety, or welfare. We're not building railroad here where we've got to connect a part of the country that's vital. We don't have power grids. We don't have power line issues. This isn't a bridge or a road. This is a corporation saying, you know what, we can improve our profits if we can do this. So this is turning the whole nature of eminent domain on its head. And I do believe this. Here's the possibility. You started out by saying that this is going to be a long-fought battle. And the reason it could be is because you had a couple of the justices there in Nebraska at the Supreme Court level who said, you know, we're not going to vote yet because some of the people who came forward didn't have standing. They had not received their letter saying, we're going to take your property. Now they have. So all of a sudden, these numbers could change. You need 5 votes, 5 out of the 7 votes here. So all of a sudden, this new dynamic's taken place, and the Senate is rushing to do what they can to interfere with that dynamic. But the test, Ed, is going to be under those simple words, those simple ideas. Is this a compelling need? Is there a compelling need to take this oil from Canada down to refineries on the Gulf Coast when you could refine it in other places? Is there a need to do this when we know that the oil coming from Canada down to the Gulf Coast is simply going to be shipped overseas for the profit of the corporation, not for the good of the citizenry of this country?
That is the bottom line. It's just not going to, and that case can be easily made in a courtroom.
I think it can. I think it's a great case, and I don't read too much into the idea that the Supreme Court passed on this the first time, because new arguments are going to be made. They're going to be developed around this public necessity versus corporate profits. That's what this is coming down to. And it is a major pivot that even takes us beyond the 1950s when developers came in and said, we're going to tear down these slums so we can develop new housing. They at least had a HUD argument there. We're going to build better housing for people. You don't really have an argument here that says this is going to be good for the American public. This is going to be good for somebody in Asia who can buy more oil. This is going to be good in Europe. It's going to be good for the Koch brothers who can make a bigger profit, but it's not good for the American public.
The landowner's attorney is Brian Jordy. I visited with him when I was in Nebraska on Saturday, and he talked about the liability that's being put on Nebraska landowners if the pipeline goes over their land. Listen to this.
So tell me about the liability. What do you mean by that? If there's an accident on their land?
That's right, because the landowners still have the liability for any negligence that may occur. And you know what negligence is, just an accident, something I didn't mean to do. So TransCanada can say, well, wasn't it you that drove your combine across the easement? Maybe you were part of the problem. Maybe it's really you. And so now you're fighting 100 lawyers at TransCanada over who did what.
So it would be the little guy against the big corporation that's got deep pockets that could drive the whole thing.
The landowner would lose everything they have.
So it's not only a risk to the aquifer if there is a spill of oil into the purification system of our water in the Midwest. It's the landowner's liability above surface if something were to go wrong.
Right, and you know why that's an important argument? From a legal standpoint, just from a legal analysis standpoint, there are two thresholds for this eminent domain. One is, as I talked about, a public necessity, a public good. The other thing, Ed, is just compensation. Now, what this attorney just said is, if you really think about what he's saying, how do we know what compensation is going to be if we understand that just a disaster, they could lose everything? How do you compensate them today for something that may be projected 10 years from now when they lose everything? What is the just compensation? Those are the two thresholds for eminent domain. Okay, you've got to reach both of those. So he's making a great argument here, but if I'm to take it down, and what does it really mean? It means it's that second leg of the standard for eminent domain, and that it's got to be just compensation, and you cannot calculate future damages here. They're not speculative. All you do is bring in an expert and say, this is probably going to happen. If it does, this is what it means for the landowner.
Now, TransCanada is trying to cash whip these landowners. This is Nebraska landowner Jim Carlson and the kind of conversations he's had with TransCanada.
The first time they came to my house, they offered me a good sum of money, and I listened to them for a little while, and I knew enough about it that I was not going to sign anything that day. And just before they left, I told them thanks, but it's not enough money, just kind of jokingly, and that wasn't going to sign. I wasn't ready to sign yet.
I mean, I've been told that you were offered $250,000 to allow this pipeline to come over your land. Is that true?
Yes, that was their first offer. The best offer I've got, it amounted to about $307,000.
And you say no to that?
Yes.
Can you be bought?
No, because my land is worth more to me and my family than any amount of money they could offer me, or would offer me, I should say that.
What do you think, Pap? I mean, how deep of pockets will they go to make this go away?
Oh, this they'll hit this guy with $1 million number before it's all over. Here's where they are. TransCanada has had to file paperwork in 9 counties, okay? You got 100 people in those 9 counties that are going to be most affected. You're going to have holdouts. They're not going to buy their way out of this because some of these people truly are patriots. You met them, Ed. You shook their hand, and you filmed them. You talked to them. They're truly patriots. They understand what's at stake here. And I think this gentleman you're talking about, $250,000 is a real number. Will they go higher? Absolutely, they'll go higher. But the problem is right now you've got people like Heidenkamp and McCaskill that need to go out there and meet these people and talk to them and understand this is not just about corporate profits. This is about something as fundamental as the right to own land unencumbered by the government. This is a big issue. And so these people are patriots.
They are. And they're very astute to what's going on. They don't want a 36-inch pipe that has 1,400 pounds of pressure with trashy oil coming over their land because of liability, because of their future. This is Nebraska landowner Terry Van Heusen explaining the concerns he's got with the pipeline.
Oh, they want to shove that pipe right through our field. And what I'm worried about is where it goes for the incline and everything. And the way it gets cold here, it'll heave that pipe and it'll track and it'll go down into our water system. And it's 2 miles from my feed yard, which I have fields in between. I got 7 neighbors, and it'll affect the water on all of them. And then it'll eventually get to my feed yard. And with all that chemical and that tar sand, it would probably kill the cattle.
That is the bottom line. There's going to be chemicals in this pipeline that is trying to dilute this heavy crude tar sands oil, that if it gets into the ground, it would be irreversible damage and they couldn't clean it up. Now, the landowners get this, but the United States Senate doesn't.
Yeah, you can't clean up benzene. Benzene is almost ubiquitous when it hits an aquifer like that. There's nothing you can really do about it. Benzene is a huge carcinogen. They know that, and so look, what was 50,000 gallons a spill that they just had a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. The BP story. We know that the angle of the corporation is to make as much money with as little investment as they can. What they do basically is they simply shift the responsibilities to the landowner, to the taxpayer. So it's not a question, is there going to be a spill? There is, and this gentleman is completely correct. It moves in the aquifer. Once benzene's in the aquifer, you've destroyed the aquifer. You can't. There's no way you're going to purge the aquifer of benzene, and benzene is a huge carcinogen. It's very, very dangerous.
America's lawyer, Ring of Fire Radio host Mike Papantonio. Mike, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Always good to be with you. This is the Ed Schultz Internet Broadcasting. Follow me on Twitter at We Got Ed and at Ed Show. Brought to you by Communication Workers of America. With Progressive Allies, CWA is building a mass movement to restore workers' bargaining rights, reclaim our democracy. You can find out more about their work and their Americanism at cwa-union.org. Now this. You know, it really doesn't matter what time of year it is. You got to clean stuff in the house, in the garage, just general cleaning. If you're going to use something, you might as well use the absolute best. I use BioGreen Clean, and I recommend it to everybody. You got a cleaning job to do? This is what you want to use. BioGreen Clean. It's from the earth. It's plant-derived. You can use it year-round on everything. The garage, the kitchen, bathroom, floor, rugs, walls, general cleaning. It does it. Pet stains, you name it. Listen to Candy.
I was cleaning my oven. You normally have to take the shelves out, and they were really disgusting, just like the bottom of the oven was. And I normally would have to scrub them with steel wool and all sorts of stuff to get the stuff off. But I didn't have time, so I just put them in the sink, filled it up with water, and I put in some BioGreen Clean, and came back later and saw all this stuff floating in the water and realized that it had cleaned it all by itself, and all I had to do was take a rag and wipe it down. And I was like, oh, my God, this was the easiest thing. My oven looks like it's brand new again.
That's how strong it is. And you know what? It's effective, and you wouldn't believe what it does to petroleum products like grease or oil or any kind of gas, and it leaves no odor. It's amazing. BioGreen Clean is from the earth. It's plant-derived. It's 100% American, 100% effective, and truly eco-friendly. 100% satisfaction guarantee to your money back. Order today. Go to my website at WeGotEd.com and order, or go to BioGreenClean.com. That's BioGreenClean.com. They'll have a demonstration right there on the website. I'm showing you just how effective and how good it is. Order today. BioGreen Clean. It's time to continue our conversation about mechanical insulation. Mechanical insulation is for the piping systems in our nation's commercial and industrial facilities. Facility owners are burning up billions of dollars through the lack of mechanical insulation on these piping systems. One uninsulated steam valve will cost you 1 barrel of oil in heat loss per year. The average hospital has hundreds of these steam valves. The insulation on the valve pays for itself in less than a year. Adding the necessary insulation to the piping for a steam line is paid back in just 12 to 14 months. America, what are you thinking? We're wasting billions. Take the walk through your plant and look at the piping systems. Call the iSave team. Insulation saves America valuable energy, and this team of energy conservation specialists is shovel-ready to save you money. Visit iSaveTeam.org and call their toll-free number to have a specialist give your plant an energy audit. That's iSaveTeam.org.
Subscribe to the Ed Schultz Podcast today. Simply log on to iTunes, search for Ed Schultz, and click the subscribe button to have the show delivered to your preferred listening device daily, free of charge. Rate and review the podcast and tell us how we're doing. More details at WeGotEd.com.
Good to have you with us on this Wednesday edition. You can get it at WeGotEd.com. RingOfFireRadio.com. Our friends at RawStory.com always put up our podcast. Appreciate that. They do great work. And you can search iTunes, put in Ed Schultz, and have it sent to your personal listening device every single day. The numbers keep coming in. Congressional Budget Office does this. There's no sell job here. It's a fact. The CBO is the nonpartisan arm that keeps all the numbers for Congress. So if somebody in Congress wants to know what the heck is going on, this is where they go. Insurance coverage is going to cost an X amount of dollars from 2015 to 2024. They got an actuary that's been printed out. The number is $964 billion, okay? $68 billion below its April 2014 projection. Now, due to factors including lower than expected enrollment in the federal and state insurance exchanges set up under the Affordable Care Act. So what does all of this mean? Wendell Potter joins us here on the Ed Schultz Internet broadcast. He's author, consultant, and columnist at the Center for Public Integrity and healthinsurance.org. Mr. Potter, great to have you with us. How do you make this call? Good to have you on.
Well, thank you very much, Ed. Appreciate that. You know, one of the things that some media reports didn't mention is that Obamacare is helping to control medical inflation. So one of the reasons also why this is expecting to cost less, significantly less, is because medical inflation is more under control than it was before the law was passed. We're spending less as a country as a percentage basis than we used to, and that's likely to continue. We don't know how long, but the other thing to keep in mind is that, yes, there are somewhat fewer people who are expected to enroll in the exchanges than previously expected, but a lot of those folks are now finding that they're eligible for Medicaid, so some of those folks will be covered under Medicaid.
It just seems to me that the majority is going to do everything they can to erase everything President Obama has accomplished, no matter what these numbers are. When you look at the totality of the health care law, how much damage can the majority do in the next 2 years, in your opinion?
You know, I don't think they can do enormous damage. I think the greatest damage could be done by the Supreme Court if it decides to rule that the subsidies in the states that defaulted to the federal government to operate their exchanges. If those people in those states are not eligible for the federal subsidies, that'll really create a lot of problems and undermine the law significantly, if not really destroy it. But I don't think that congressional Republicans can do all that much harm, because as long as we have Obama in the White House, I think it's fairly certain that he would veto any legislation that would really cripple the law.
We haven't heard a whole lot in the media or conversation about how rural hospitals are doing as the implementation of Obamacare has taken place since the beginning of 2013. What do you hear on that front? How are rural hospitals faring?
Well, it depends on which states you're looking at. In the states that have not expanded Medicaid, some of them are not faring quite well at all. I know in where I grew up in southern Appalachia, some of the hospitals in that area on both sides of the Tennessee-Virginia border have closed because those states did not expand Medicaid. And the way the federal government is now helping those hospitals stay afloat has changed because of Obamacare. In the states that have expanded Medicaid, they're doing quite well.
Quite well, meaning they're making more money. They're taking on the patient load and doing better.
They're doing both because they're getting a steady income stream from the federal government, and they're able to take the patients who many of them previously weren't insured, and now many of them are on Medicaid, or many of them others are insured because of the exchanges in those states.
So we have got 19 million this year. We've reduced the number of uninsured Americans by 19 million this year, and by 24 to 27 million people each year from 2016 onwards. That's kind of a lofty goal. Now, who's benefiting from this? Is it low income people, or when does this really start to hit the middle class?
It really benefits everybody, to tell you the truth. Those who are most directly affected on a day-to-day basis are low to middle-income people, or middle-income people who are at the lower end of the middle-income spectrum, because they are the ones who are eligible for the subsidy. So they're getting help that enables them to afford coverage. And many of those folks, depending on their income, are also eligible for help to pay their out-of-pocket expenses, which is very, very good. So those folks are being helped a great deal. People in the middle class are also helped in this way. I mean, even if they get their coverage through their employer, none of us, if we go to work, has any assurance that we're going to be able to go back the next day. We may get fired, we may get injured, and otherwise become unemployed. Now becoming unemployed doesn't mean that you're going to become uninsured. So it helps it should, and it does. It gives middle income people a lot more peace of mind, knowing that they will not join the ranks of the uninsured necessarily if they lose their jobs. Most middle income folks, unfortunately, just don't know that. I fault the Democrats, quite frankly, for not touting the benefits of the law to most Americans.
The better outcomes. Are we seeing that at more of a rapid pace than what we thought we were going to see? I mean, healthier outcomes reduce costs. I mean, that is the big theory behind all of this.
It's going to take some time. I think we're beginning to see some evidence of that, but it's going to take some time to see the evidence and to measure it. One of the things that the Medicare program is beginning to do is to change the way that providers, healthcare providers, doctors, and hospitals are compensated. So we're moving away from this strictly fee-for-service system in which doctors and hospitals are going to be paid based on how well they care for their patients. That's going to have a big impact.
Okay. Wendell Potter, always great to visit with you on this. Thanks for your time today. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you, Ed.
You bet. Wendell Potter, author, consultant, columnist at the Center for Public Integrity and HealthInsurance.org, a revered source when it comes to health care in America. Tonight on the Ed Show, 5 o'clock Eastern on MSNBC, a conversation about the Iranian nuclear program. There are some Democrats and Republicans who want more sanctions put on the Iranians. And, of course, there's a number of positions taken by the president on this that he simply will not do any more sanctions because these talks, as the administration puts it, they want to exhaust every effort to make sure that the Iranians are sure and that possibly we could get a nuclear deal with them. This is a President Cut 11 talking about the nuclear talks with the Iranians.
If I've got a bunch of scientists and nuclear experts saying this assures us that Iran is not on the brink of being a nuclear weapons power, then that's a public debate we should have.
Well, Lindsey Graham sees it a different way and also connects it to Afghanistan.
But the biggest mistake is yet to come. If we continue on the path we are with the Iranians, they're going to wind up with a nuclear capability just like North Korea and one day have a bomb. He's about to make the biggest mistake of his presidency, and that is allow a nuclear capability, thousands of centrifuges in Iran to be operated by the Iranians, to be overseen by the United Nations. And the only thing between us and a nuclear capable Iran, the Ayatollahs in Iran, will be the UN. That did not work in North Korea. It will not work in Iran. So I really believe the biggest mistake is yet to come, and that's the Iranian nuclear program. And his decision to withdraw all of our troops by 2017 in Afghanistan is literally insane in light of Iraq. All of his military commanders are saying you should not set a date for withdrawal. You should withdraw based on conditions.
Lots of opinion and speculation with the soundbite and position of Senator Lindsey Graham. More factual coming from the president, is how I read it. More conversation on this tonight, 5 o'clock Eastern on MSNBC on The Ed Show. We'll see you then and back tomorrow.